It's really nice to have dinner with a few friends, and I appreciate you all joining us. We have some killer speakers. You're going to get to hear from these young folks up here, and Lou too, and you're going to have to hear about Boston real estate, pre-IPO investing, and how to protect all the money that you have and get it to the people you like. I was asked by somebody why I did this, and I would just tell you, many of you, I see a few familiar faces, know that I ran a financial practice for 50 years. That's 5 with a 0, right? That's now been taken over by a couple of wonderful people that are here in the audience. Matt, you want to wave? Matt's back there, Matt Pescatori. He runs Legacy Financial Advisors. Kenny Moran, he's over there, yeah. These two young men took over all the daily duties to liberate me to do the writing. And my editors over at Amazon said nobody wants to read 300 pages about money because 90% doesn't apply to them. So we did 3 bites: the boomer generation, the millennials, and the X-Geners. We're going to go into that a little bit, but I'm really happy that you're all here. And I want to ask you a huge favor. I know we have lots of social media. Folks came from social media. We have a wonderful team. You'll see a lot of them here. I want to thank them. They do all that. I'm just like Keith Lockhart here. I'm like the conductor. They do all the hard work, and I want to thank them. But does anybody have a cell phone? Could you do us a huge favor, right? This is the inaugural meeting, right? If you could, I'll have my boys stand up. If you could take a picture of these folks that are here and post it on your favorite social media. By the way, if you don't know how to do that, thank you. Thank you very much. I have some killer assistants. That's Sarah right there. And Sarah knows everything you know about our social media outreach. Thank you very much. She will help you post that on your favorite places so you can remember you were here at the first of our launch meetings. We're going to be doing about 6 of these around New England. And I think we're all very excited. As I said, we got our last shipment of books in today after 18 months of writing. Now, also, by the way, if you follow social media, if you're following us on Facebook, or you listen to the podcast, or you're following us on YouTube, I want to tell you that it took me 50 years to impact 4,000 families. I did 4,000 financial plans as a practitioner over 50 years. Now, because of technology, in just one 9-month period, we have nearly 3,000 subscribers, so we're able to impact more people with financial literacy faster. That's a benefit of technology. We'll talk a little bit about AI later and some of the other features, but as far as technology is concerned, that's one of the reasons that we're doing what we're doing. Also, by the way, for me, this is the fun part, okay? So we're going to hear from these folks, but I want to tell you that in my world, after actually looking at everybody's finances for many, many years, what does wealth mean to you? Well, there's a big Schwab survey that came out. Some of you might have seen it. And a lot of it has to do with luck. It has the luck of when you were born, where you were born. You know, boomers, 1946 to 1964. I'm one of those. My dad was in the Navy. He came back from Okinawa and Saipan and all these terrible places. You couldn't put him in a bad mood. When he came back, he became a hood milkman. Does anybody remember the guys with the little clinking bottles? My dad was so happy to do that, right? He was a Sicilian American. We started with 0, nothing, right? And he was just happy to be alive. 75 million boomers are out there today. And then there's the Gen Xers. There's 61 million of them and 92 million millennials, right? That's about a big chunk of the American population. But everybody feels differently about wealth and money. The boomers, they feel like the rug's been yanked out, which is true, by the way. Over their lifetimes, they've seen the end of guaranteed pensions, the end of guaranteed medical, the changes in the laws. They can't even leave their IRAs to their kids without losing half the money. And then we have those folks that are in the middle, the Gen Xers. In my book on longevity, there's a lot in there about the Stanford study on longevity and about the 12-year dividend. They call it the longevity dividend, which sounds awesome. Living from like 88 to 100, you have a high probability. Well, that's like another $1 million. People are waking up today saying, no, if I live to 100, I'm going to need a few more bucks. You know, there is no AAA if your retirement plan breaks down when you're 90, you know. And then we have, of course, our youngest people. I think there might be some here, some millennials that are scared to death. I don't blame them. Dave Pine's going to talk about it. Real estate, college education. I mean, these things are just critical expenses. The numbers are like, huge. So we're going to advocate for a lot of these folks to, read a book like mine or some other book and get started. The most important thing for our millennials, whether they're in your family or not, is to get started. But many of these things have to do with luck. And I will tell you, my books are what they are, but they're all about finance, and they're not exactly the most fun books in the world. But this is a fun book written by Dr. Richard Wiseman, and it's about luck. And if you want to give your family a couple of great books, I think if you have a big family, give them mine, but also give them this book by Dr. Wiseman. And he has a lot to say about luck and how it affects your life. Of course, I'm very lucky. That's my wife, Linda, over there. She can wave. My partner, Nick's mom, runs the house, part of the business. I've been very fortunate. I lucked out, right, when it came to the spouse pool, right? And I think I'm also very fortunate to have a staff that's been with me, some of them, 48 out of the last 50 years of doing this type of financial work. So we want all of us to recognize when the door to luck opens, to walk through it, or in fact, run through it if you can. Let's have a couple quizzes, though. Let's have some fun. So what's interesting about this whole topic of wealth is it has a lot to do with where you're born and when you're born. So let's just say, by the way, I wouldn't have quizzes if I didn't have prizes. I actually have right here some gold bars that I'm going to give out. Now, these are real gold bars, which I bought a couple years ago. If you know anything about the price of gold, they've gone up a lot since I bought them. And if someone gets the number right on the nose, right, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you think you get it. We have a few folks with mics that are going to run around. All you have to say is your first name, right, and your number. And if you hit this number, you will get this chunk of gold, okay? And if we do our job right, you won't ever be able to spend it, right? You'll hand it down to your grandkids or something. So what do you think it means? How much money do you think a boomer in the city of Boston needs to have to feel like they're wealthy? Take a guess. Guesses are free. Go ahead. 2 million to this guy over here. 5 million to the young fellow up front, the only guy with a tie on. I appreciate that. I used to wear them all the time. Okay, down and back. 8 million. Wow. Okay. That's a pretty big spread. Get the mics up front here, guys. 1.1 million. 10 million. Holy cow, we haven't hit it yet, Matt, have we? I really want to give by the way, guys, if I bring these home, my wife considers me a failure, right? So when I bring gifts to give away, we got to give them out. So let's have a few more guesses. Oh, stop. Very philosophical, but it's not right. Go ahead, bring the mic over, Kenny. Guys, let me take the mystery out of it. It's 2.7 million. Now, this is from the Schwab study. This is not from my experience, but did anybody actually guess 2.7 million on the nose? Did that guy do it? Are you fibbing? Because if somebody got 2.7 million on the nose, they get this chunk of gold, right? So I don't know that I heard it, but I'll give you another chance. Because when I talk about Dr. Wiseman and we talk about luck, for those of us that are we're already lucky. We weren't born in Ghana, we weren't born in the Middle Ages, during the Black Death or something. Let's try this one out. Now, let's just say that you were born 3,000 miles away, a baby boomer, not born in Boston. Just because of luck, you were born in the Bay Area. I started in San Jose, by the way. I love the Bay Area. There's a lot about the Bay Area to like. But let's try this again, because really, like I said, I got to give these things out. I can't bring these home. So what do you think it feels like in the Bay Area? What's the number to make you feel wealthy? Shoot. 4.8. I think that was 5. And 10 million again?
Yeah, 5.3 over here.
That guy, if you keep guessing the same thing, sooner or later you're going to win. Go ahead.
4.2.
4.2.
3.2 over here.
1.5.
4.7 over here.
4.5.
Are you keeping track?
3.6.
I think we might have had a winner.
4.5 here.
Okay, let's do this. Boom. Here it is, 4.4. I think we had a winner. I think it's the guy up here in the green shirt. Who else said, did you say 4.4? Are you fibbing? Because I don't want to cut this thing in half. But I'll tell you what, Matt, I think this guy got it first. And you know what? As a consolation prize, that guy gets one of our very sexy, smart financial t-shirts. So, this fellow right here got it, I think, for sure. And that guy was so close. Here, Matt, I don't have one of those guns from the football games, but shoot him a t-shirt. Okay, so it depends on the luck of when we're born and where we're born. I'll give you a few more numbers from this study that are really interesting. There we go. Sorry, a Gen Xer. This is interesting, okay? What do you think a Gen Xer needs to have to feel wealthy? I won't keep you in suspense too long. Just a couple of guesses. A Gen Xer. One of our guys, come up here. Take that. I mean, that's close enough. All right, but here's the most shocking one of them all, and then we'll move on to some more substantive stuff. How about Gen Z? This is an interesting thing. Our youngest people who are the most freaked, it's that guy over there, are the most freaked about the future. What do you think Gen Z needs to have to feel that wealthy feeling in their gut? 5, 10.
5.1 over
This is
here.
going to knock you out. 1.2 million. This is why we say financial education is in short supply. I mean, the people that need it the most are planning on the least. So for those of you, by the way, that are grandparents, and I encourage you, we're going to be giving away some grandparent books. We'll be signing them afterwards. I mean, one of the greatest things I think that you can transfer to the next generation is some of the realities of like what these numbers mean. And I don't need to knock 1.2 million. But for that generation, that is just not going to cut it, folks. It's just not going to do it. So let's move along a little bit and get into the meat of this. The feeling of wealth is really different for everybody. And I don't know if anybody's heard of the Great Gatsby curve. Has anybody heard of this? The Great Gatsby curve? Right. Okay. You're either Homer Simpson or you're out there with Leonardo DiCaprio and F. Scott Fitzgerald, right, in The Great Gatsby. So in this book, The Happiness Factor, written by Daniel Kahneman at Princeton, he homed in on the number. There's a little star there, right? And I'll tell you what that number is. That is the number where every single dollar that you add to your wealth adds a tremendous amount of happiness, security, safety. You can feed your family. You can pay for fuel for the house. Like all these different things that when we're young and we don't have any money, that we really worry about, right? And then it flattens out like crazy. The difference in happiness between someone who has 2 million and 4 million is almost insignificant, right? The extra dollars piled on top don't necessarily make them feel any better. This was proven by Dr. Kahneman. And that impact is really important to an individual person. I will tell you, having done 4,000 financial plans, there are people that feel super wealthy with a small amount of money. They have a great lifetime pension. And then we have people who have 10 to 100 million that can't sleep at night. They worry so much. So we want to help you, if we can, get to your goal and get the biggest sort of wealth feeling from your bucks. Now, I will tell you, I can violate my own privacy on this. I know exactly the first time that I felt the feeling of being a little better off. I remember going into a gas station the first time and being able to say, fill it up rather than give me $2 or $3. And some of you that are nodding, you remember that era for us, right? Right? There was a time when we were really concerned. Things changed. However, really, they haven't changed that much. If you grew up in this area, you probably remember. So, anybody remember Filene's Basement? How about Jordan Marsh? Right, okay. This is what changed. We went from being online to inline. I have to tell you, I get to violate my mother's privacy all the time. She had a really great expression. Now it's Singles Day, it's Prime Day, it's Black Friday. Everybody wants the best, but nobody wants to pay retail, right? Does that sound familiar? All right? And especially The folks that were in the boomer generation, that's how they ended up with money. They wanted the best, and they made sure they didn't pay retail for it, right? And this is what's happening today. And I think the technology that's going on today is going to make it better, cheaper, and faster for us to get a lot of the things that we want. That's actually a big topic in the wealth building book. And if I can get this thing to move forward. If you work with a financial advisor of any kind, and I suggest you do that, if you read any one of the 3 books, the last chapter is about how to hire a team. You might think you can do it all yourself. I'm not on that side of the camp. I'm a little bit prejudiced because I've seen the results of people who hire a team. We'll get into that later. You've probably seen this pyramid. This pyramid is like the fundamental part of any kind of financial programming. At the bottom is the lowest risk for our oldest population of super safe money, because guess what? You get to a certain age, maybe your appetite for risk goes away and your timeline for recovering goes away, right? However, every smart portfolio has a piece of all these things. And at the top, we're going to go right to the top, to the bright red glowing piece at the top, which is the most high-risk things that you can do with your money, which include some of the things that you've never been able to do in your whole lives until now. Because of changes in regulations and changes in technology, you're going to get to hear next from one of our speakers that's going to tell you how you can participate in the kind of things that made, do we want to always pick on Musk? I don't know. That made billionaires under every rock. The fastest growing population in America is the billionaire class. So in order to tell us about how they got there, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Will Snape. He's a co-founder of a company called OpenVC. It has a lot to do with the things that you want to do, but maybe you didn't think you could do until right now. So let's welcome Will Snape.
I'm Will Snape. I'm one of the co-founders at OpenVC. We're an asset manager that's backed by the New York Stock Exchange, and we're focusing on delivering strategies that are, as Paul mentioned, focused on private markets, specifically the pre-IPO space, which is, for those unfamiliar, companies that are at the kind of precipice of their private markets eras, and they're about to enter the public sphere. So some of the largest private companies like a SpaceX, like a Stripe, like an XAI. Why am I standing up here and why are we doing what we do at OpenVC is because if you look at the data, it's pretty clear. Historically, any way you slice it over the last 20 years, private market strategies have really just performed better than public market strategies on the whole. So the next obvious question is, okay, why isn't everyone doing this? And there's many reasons for this, but the 3 common themes are, well, one, most people just frankly can't access them. A lot of these deals are invite only, they're over the counter, you have to know someone who is participating. So they're just frankly difficult for the majority of people to access. Also, the fees are too high, in our opinion, at OpenVC. It's that 2 and 20 are where you pay a 2% fee every year just for the privileges of accessing these strategies, and any 20% of any profits that they generate is not really appropriate for sort of the mass affluent sort of retail, quote unquote, investor. And so we're looking to change that as well. And lastly, they're not considered necessarily risk appropriate because they're very concentrated. You're taking very small bets on a small number of companies. There's not a lot of diversification. Who are we missing? Well, there's all these other sort of strategies that exist today. I'm sure a lot of the names on this slide that people are familiar with, obviously BlackRock and Founders Fund on sort of the 2 extremes. BlackRock does things at scale in the public markets. It's available to everybody. D.E. Shaw, other hedge funds like them, they do things in the public markets, but it's a little bit more private. It's harder to get access, and they charge those very expensive fees. Founders Fund is sort of similar. They are a premier venture fund. They work in the private markets as well, and they also charge those very high fees. So very hard to access, but in theory, should be very high returns. There's not that private market kind of at scale equivalent that exists today because of a lot of reasons, but some of the key sort of prohibitors historically have been there is a lot of limited data. To run those strategies, you need financial data that is publicly available. Inherently, the private markets are private, so it's harder to get. There's limited liquidity, so folks that can't have their capital tied up for 10, 12, sometimes 15 years, that's just not feasible for them. And there's also not a lot of institutional administration. These are not on exchanges that you can trust. They're not typically on a Charles Schwab or tradable on the New York Stock Exchange, for example. why do we need these products in the market, in our view? Well, frankly, the sort of tagline answer is because the alpha is now in the private markets. I think everyone here who's been paying attention has probably looked at what is considered a banner year in the stock market and the public markets, particularly the Mag 7 or the top 7 largest companies in the public sphere. But if you look at their sort of private market equivalents year to date, I mean, the returns are dwarfed. In some extreme examples, over 200% year to date returns in some of these private companies. So the long story short, if you want to sort of have extra alpha and find those sort of extra returns in your portfolio, you have to enter the private markets to do it. It just doesn't exist like it used to in the public sphere. Besides returns, why does this matter? I promise I'll eventually get to sort of what this means for you. But besides great returns, when you're thinking about portfolio management, and we're speaking with advisors, and we speak to the guys at Legacy, of course, about sort of how this fits in and makes sense around their clients at the end of the day, and how do we sort of build a product that is appropriate for that type of demographic. We think about things beyond returns like non-correlated performance. David will get up here and talk to you about another way to kind of diversify the larger portfolio. But we believe, and this is one of the indices that we launch with the New York Stock Exchange here, the one in blue at the top. While it's great that it shows that it performs really well, what is also, I think, interesting is the fact that it doesn't move with these other public indices. So you have a bit of non-correlated performance, which is just kind of the basis of a healthy portfolio. And then secondly, companies are just staying private longer. I don't have the stat in front of me, but Facebook, I think, was private for 8 years before they went public. There are companies like Google that it was closer to 4. Now you have companies like Stripe that have been private for 20 years, and by the time they reach the public markets, assuming they ever do, which there's no promising that they ever do now, all of that alpha, all of the juice has been squeezed, so to say, and by the time they reach the public markets, when they get to kind of the masses, they're left, with kind of a less impressive sort of return profile for themselves.
This isn't for everybody, and it has been the province of very affluent people, which over the years we used to call accredited investors. So what changed?
Well, a few things changed. You had folks, and I'll get to this sort of in the next slide, but you have folks that, like an Andreessen Horowitz, and some famous Founders Fund is another example, famous venture funds that are realizing that they've kind of tapped all the capital they can in the private markets from the investors that they have, and they're looking for other ways to invite a larger cohort of investors into the space. So there's a lot of institutional kind of push to get people more involved. And then I think also you have, with improving technology, you have the emergence of what we call secondary markets, where if someone owns shares of SpaceX, they can trade them with me. That's a secondary transaction. And so the marketplaces for those types of trades have really become more robust with the sort of emergence of better data, better technology to sort of feed that data. All to say, it's a combination of technology and sort of the force of will of some of these big firms.
We want to emphasize two things. Number one, and you can give the answer, these all look great, OpenAI, SpaceX, all this stuff. Is this a fund of companies you think will go public, or companies that will definitely go public?
That's the sort of beauty of our strategy in our view, is that we would argue as a firm that unless you know Elon Musk personally or Sam Altman personally, you're not going to really know what their plans are. There are some folks that have said Stripe, the founders of Stripe, said they never want to go public. They don't have a reason to do it. And so in our view, if you get the top 20 largest by market cap companies that represent the most mature examples of a private company, you don't need to guess. You can say, we're going to get all 20 of these companies. We're going to put them in a fund that's more accessible to more people. We're going to hold it for 5 years, which is definitely a caveat for some folks. And if that's not viable, then it's probably not a good strategy for you. But we'll hold these for 5 years. And if they IPO while we hold them, that's fantastic. And we can return profits to people in a very simple way. But also, if they don't go public by the time we've finished the fund, we can return principal and profit on the secondary market in a very similar way. So we don't have to take the risk and try to call the winners, which is, I'll never tell you that's going to be my strong suit.
For those of you that have little cards, we gave you little cards. We're going to have questions at the end. And for those of you that are shy and you don't want the mic stuck in your face, I know we have a few of those, you can write your questions on cards, and we're going to have some of our staff people collect them. And if you want to write down the magic question for Will, which I know a lot of us are already wondering, like, which one of these companies is going to make us the next billionaire? Yes, exactly, right. So we won't have him do it in public right now.
No,
but
turn off
I
the
would-
mics.
Yeah, but just to sort of protect he's going to put the disclosures up there in a second, but to protect his viability in business. But you can sneak that question onto your cards, pass it to the ushers that are going to go around and collect them, and then when we get to the end, you can whisper to Snape, and he might whisper the answer. And I also do want to emphasize, we saw some young people in here, and I just want to say that it is absolutely a fact that you don't have to take this type of top-level, top-of-the-pyramid risk for everybody. An average person at 25 years old that puts away a couple thousand and buys an index fund, you're going to retire with millions of dollars, right? $1.5 million is the common return. You'll see that number all the time. So there is no great reward without great risk. So that's why we're going to let Will sit down now, and we're going to bring up the second member of the portfolio building group, which is David Pine. And if you click forward past those gnarly disclosures, so David is a person that finds himself in the middle of that pyramid where we have more growth and more moderate sort of exposure in the number one wealth building tool of the last 60 years, which is real estate, and especially in the greater Boston area. So with a tremendous amount of experience he brings to the table, let's get the inside scoop on Boston real estate New England real estate, because we've been talking a lot about Maine today, right? New England real estate from David Pine. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Paul. I have had the pleasure of wearing many different hats during my career in real estate, everything from developer, broker, asset manager. So I'd like to first get into kind of where the market is today, and then some different investment vehicles that people could do tomorrow or in the future. All right, so the current state of the real estate market. So after COVID, there was a pretty big boom. You probably saw it on the news. Home prices kind of shot up, commercial real estate shot up. And then after the rates started to go up, there's been a cool down, kind of sending buyers and sellers to the sidelines. So things have been slower. Things have started to kind of heat up now as as rates kind of come down. And maybe for the first time, you're going to have, buyers are going to have power, which is shifting. Usually the sellers have had the power since COVID. It might be different. One thing, can't really see on the slide right now, but one fact I always like to bring up is people always are fearful of 2008. Is something like that going to happen again? And if I knew that, I would be on Wall Street in New York in a penthouse, not in real estate. But one fact people always don't know is we built about half the homes in the country in the 10 years after 2008 than the 10 years before. And what that boils down to is America has a supply problem in commercial, but specifically residential real estate. And New England is definitely in that category. So I'm assuming there's a lot of homeowners in here, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and you've seen kind of tremendous returns on those houses. Now, the house you live in has a lot of equity in it, but is not considered an investment. But it's important to talk on because, if you get into the game, if you are a homeowner, you do see great results. And New England is especially kind of protected from any kind of crashes because of zoning laws, environmental laws, labor shortages. But the biggest reason is we just don't have that much land to develop. It's not like Texas or Florida or kind of anywhere in the South that has a lot more land that can, eventually become a house lot. So, that it's in Massachusetts specifically, it has tech, ed, and healthcare that kind of are those aren't going away anytime soon, right? So we have a lot of reasons to be very happy if you're a homeowner in New England, and reasons why, if you're considering it, definitely get in the game. So now I'm going to talk about some different real estate. So now we're going to do talk about some different ways you can invest. The first is everyone tomorrow can log on to their E-Trade account and buy a REIT or a real estate company that's publicly traded. Some names you've probably heard: Blackstone, Avalon, American Tower. These companies are very massive. Some of them are diversified across asset classes and regions, and they give your portfolio kind of great real estate dividends as well as kind of exposure where you can feel confident you're invested in real estate in something else other than your home. So that, if you want, like, kind of everyone do your own research, and Paul and his team can definitely direct you on what kind of funds or REITs that would be the best to invest in. Now I'm going to talk about what I like to do, and what I do is local investment opportunities. Usually when I'm speaking, it is in a neighborhood meeting, and it's very nice being in front of a crowd that doesn't want to tear my head off for proposing a project next to their house. But so real estate is local investments is when you buy a piece of land for the purpose of building, remodeling, or just kind of cash flowing an asset. They can be holds you for the rest of your life, or quick fix up and flips. You can invest in kind of GP or LP. You can invest in a lot of kind of different ways in this.
When he says GP or LP, I mean, LP sounds like something we put in our barbecues, in the backyard. Right. So let's do a couple of definitions. So, I mean, these are like huge numbers, 18 to 24% returns. And yes, those are the type of products, whether you buy a REIT, a real estate investment trust, from someone like, Matt or Kenny at Legacy, those are publicly traded. But what is a GP and what is an LP?
GPs take on the most risk, and they run the project, they deal with the day-to-day, and if the project goes really well, they're going to make more money. LPs, limited partners, are people that invest their money. A company like mine would come to you and say, hey, we're going to buy this property, we're going to fix it up, and it's going to cash flow this because of this is the rent. So limited partners they won't make as much money if the project goes well, but they're first to get their money back, so they have the least amount of risk, least amount of upside. So for most people in this room, you would be in the kind of LP investments if you went this route.
To put this into perspective, for those of us that have done direct ownership of real estate, and I have a bunch of experience in this area, if you've ever had to go to somebody to collect rent with some really tall, muscular friend of yours because they haven't been paying their rent or something, that is like the lowest life form of real estate investing. And again, I wasn't very good at it, although we own a lot of rental property now. But I will tell you, this type of investment is completely separate. Nobody has to go out and collect checks. They're doing it. Nobody has to go out and get the project financing. They're doing it. So this is really passive. This is what you would call like super passive real estate investing, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to kind of define it. I would say the last thing on this is there's all different there's big funds, big groups that do skyscrapers to little mom and pop shops that just do single home flips. The longer out a project is from cash flowing, the riskier it is. You could go buy a Starbucks, right, that's has a lease tomorrow and it's going to be cash flowing. So you should expect a shorter return, but there's not really any risk. Starbucks isn't going to go under anytime soon. I've worked for usual companies that we buy land, we'll get the zone changed, we'll permit the land, and then we'll build the land. So that will take about 3 to 4 years. A lot can go wrong in 3 to 4 years. But if it goes right, it's a higher return. So risk, the longer if someone gives you a project, the longer it is, the better the return should be on paper. But the riskier it gets. So the last investment vehicle is kind of wrong way, I want to talk about is vacation homes and kind of the Airbnb effect we're seeing. So in New England, some of the states have the highest percentage of second homes as in their housing stock. So this is people that, are traditionally the vacation home. I'm sure a lot of people out here have one. If not, you have friends that have them. Airbnb has made it so easy for everyone to go online and kind of rent something at a very high premium rate, where that asset is now can be an investment. It can cash flow. I'll tell you, I don't think I've been to a wedding or a bachelor party in the past 5 years that hasn't been an Airbnb kind of effect. And you now have people that do it professionally. That's all they do. They own almost like a hotel. They own 5 or 6. And you have people now that are justifying buying a property because they say, okay, there's properties in the area. I'm going to bring in this much cash flow. This is the expenses. I'm going to rent it out for half the summer, and then I'm going to live in it half the summer. This is very common on the Cape now, the Hamptons, kind of a lot of places up here. So now if you think that could be you, or I would recommend talking to Paul or the financial advisor because they can definitely tell you if you have the kind of capital or the savings to do that. But it's something we're seeing a lot of in the market, from professionals to people that just want to rent it out just to keep it in the family. So with that, those are kind of the three kind of vehicles I want to talk about tonight. And I will hand it back over to Paul.
We do want to remind those people that are here, again, because of Dr. Wiseman's book, How Lucky We Were. For those of us that bought real estate years ago, I'm going to bring you back a little bit, and I might even have a quiz because I'm still trying to give away this other gold bar, by the way. Let's see if anybody gets it right. So in 1960, my dad and mom, they got a few bucks together, and they bought their first house. And I'm going to give you a little hint, and then we're going to have a quiz, okay? What do you think the average income was in America in 1960? They paid $21,000 for a home in the suburbs on the Gold Coast between, Connecticut and New York, where everybody wanted to live at that time, right? And a beautiful house in the country with a little lake and a boat and all this kind of baloney. $21,000 is what they paid. What do you think the average income in America was in 1960? Go ahead, take a guess and win my gold bar. I see someone holding up a 6 back there, okay? And I think we have a winner because, right, at that time, the average annual income was about $6,000, right? $6,000, right? 6 to 7, and they bought a house for $21,000. Now, here we are in Boston. It's 2025. And as you heard from our Boston real estate expert, the average home in the greater Boston area is like $655,000, and the average income is like $80,000. It's a 7X for these kids to get houses. So for those of us that bought real estate, like I did, my first home in Lexington, 1974, right? $49,000. That was the house, the dirt, everything, right? We weren't investment experts. This goes back to Dr. Wiseman. We were just a little lucky, but what was important is we got in the game. And this is, again, part of the last chapter of my grandparenting book. One of the things that you can transfer to your grandkids is don't wait unless you think there's some outsized reason why the real estate market's going to go down or women are going to stop having babies or something, right? Residential real estate is like critical for what Warren Buffett calls family formation. Buy a house, get married, have babies. This is what drives the U.S. economy. So all those things have been pushed off by as much as 8 years, right? Now, I know I can violate his privacy because David's here and he just got engaged. Congratulations, right? And so he's going to help the U.S. economy by doing some family formation, right? And I think Mr. Snape over there is right behind him, right? Also going to help all of our sort of local economies. So let me jump ahead now. Now that we've talked about investments of a generic nature, stocks, bonds, REITs, right, private equity, and we've talked about real estate, I want to talk about how you get these things to the people that you like. Now, we'll see if I can get this thing to work. I know you guys seem to figure out the code on this thing. Click. Oh, look at this. We happen to have with us Attorney Lou Sorgi, and I think we also have his wife. Is Anna here? There she is. Hi, Anna. Okay, so Lou's a lawyer, his wife's a lawyer, his daughter's a lawyer, his son's you getting the theme here? All right, so, yeah. Lou runs a multi-generational firm. We've done work together for the last 30 years out of my 50 years in practice. Very, very great sort of like a stroke of luck that I happened to meet him at a time when my parents were going through the aging process. And I will just tell you, by way of this, I'm going to tell you a few stories that have to do with transferring your money to the people that you care about. Because it's great to build up a lot of money, and it's great to build up a lot of real estate and all that stuff. But has anybody here ever heard of Jimmy Buffett? Yeah, Margaritaville, right? Some pretty decent food. The music was better than the food, but whatever. Okay, Jimmy Buffett passed away a little while ago. Does anybody know whether Jimmy Buffett had a great, like, buttoned-up, all-together estate plan? Has anybody been following this? Now, you're outside of our world, so you have a real life. You don't have to follow this. Okay. Jimmy Buffett's family has been in probate since 30 days after he passed away. Now, he's got about $250 million estate. They're in probate. Lou's going to talk a little bit about probate, but I challenge you to, when we're talking about these things and you're filling out your little question cards, I just picked up some outside from the ladies that have been collecting them, right? If you can find anything good about probate, please write it down. You will be the first one in history, right, to do that, right? Anyway, they're in probate. I can't even imagine what the cost will be. You can ask Lou. That's really his world, right? But there's another person I think that you might recognize. On the way here, as you go down the Mass Pike, you pass a little place called McDonald's. Anybody know who Ray Kroc is? Yeah. What did he do? Ray Kroc did one great thing. You got it. You're right. He actually bought the McDonald's franchise from the McDonald brothers, right? And if you read his story, he's got a really interesting book. Ray Kroc bought this deal. He was a seller of like blenders to them to make milkshakes, and he ended up buying the place. Does anybody know how he ended up buying the franchise to McDonald's? Yeah, he took a loan on the house his wife's father bought for her, but he didn't tell her. This, I think, led to his first divorce, okay? Now, Ray was a great businessman, maybe not a great marital partner, but at any rate, so he went through a few wives. Some of the ones in the middle aren't worth even counting, but his last wife was Joan Kroc. And if anybody listen to PBS every once in a while, right? WGBH, PBS, NPR, okay, right. Well, Joan Kroc, really interesting lady, married to Ray Kroc, right? They were like oil and water. Ray Kroc, very well known, far right, very conservative, ultra conservative guy, right? Joan Kroc, supporter of public television, public radio, all those kind of things. So what happened when Ray Kroc died to his $550 million? Well, I will tell you one thing, it didn't go to the children that he had with his first wife, number one. Number two, a very large percentage of it was given to public radio. The largest grant ever given to public radio was given by Joan Kroc. And she had to wait for her husband to die to do it. Now, I don't know if that was what Ray planned on, but I will tell you, the balance of the estate went to her daughter that she had with another guy other than Ray Kroc. Now, I would call that crummy planning. I don't know. If that sounds like it makes sense to you, you're probably all set. But I'm going to bring up somebody now who's going to talk about proper planning to get your assets to the people that you like, and he's going to mention some of the things that are on this slide. But I think, Louis, why don't I let you explain, if I can get this to go forward. Hold on. Yep, there we are. I'm going to get Lou to explain some of the reasons why things go badly here in Massachusetts.
Hi, everybody. So now you've heard all this exciting investment world and houses and IPOs and Paul. I'm not going to bore you with real estate planning 101, okay? I will tell you why, talking about Wiseman, I was very lucky. He introduced Anna. If it wasn't for Anna, we wouldn't have our generational law firm. And I consider myself very lucky for that. So what we do is, after you do all of this, you still have to make sure you protect it, you don't lose it, you be able to set it up so you can take care of each other, very important, and you get it to the people you want to get it to without having to worry about the probate court telling you how to do it and who's going to get it. And finally, to make sure it goes to the kids you want it to go to, the way you want it to get there, without paying oodles of taxes. And I'll give you just, we have one example I'm going to run through with you, and then we'll work through that. Before I get to the example, I'm simply going to say, everybody in this room, every single person, with exception, without exception, should have a will, a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney, and some sort of trust. The trust work you do will depend on who you are, what you have, and what your goals are before we can determine what kind of trust you would do. Paul and I have been doing this for like 25 years, and we work as a team. The only way this works for your investing world is to set it up with an architected plan so that it gets to where you want it to go. So I build the structure. Me and my family, I can't say that, me and the other attorneys build it, in a plan so that it's protected and you take care of each other, and we do some long-term care planning so you don't lose it to the state. All of those things are important. But let me give you an example, very simple example. In Massachusetts, we have what's called the unlimited marital deduction. So for most folks, they go to a senior center or they hear it at a cocktail party and somebody says, you don't have to worry about the Massachusetts estate tax because when you die, your wife gets it all for free. And that's true. Very true. If you're married and you pass away, your surviving spouse inherits everything, either through wills, trusts, improperly drawn trust, beneficiaries, or through probate. They get it all, no estate tax. That sounds great. Yep, we're done. Everybody can go home. The problem is, in Massachusetts, we have a $2 million per person estate tax credit. Okay? So each person in this room gets to pass $2 million on to their spouse without paying any tax. Okay? You don't get to pass the extent. So now we go back to the unlimited marital deduction. So you die, and your money goes to your spouse. Okay? Your $2 million doesn't. So your $4 million family deduction just went to 2. And here's an example of how it works. Paul and I had a client who had a house in Massachusetts, a total estate of $4 million. It was a house in Newton, a house down the Cape, $2 million in IRA. Okay, $4 million. No proper planning. And when I say proper planning, they probably had a will, they might have had a trust, but it wasn't properly drawn. Because in Massachusetts, in order to not have this happen, all of that, even with the will and even with an improperly drawn trust, or with none at all, the $2 million death tax is over $200,000. So if you died, everything went to your spouse because you had an improper will with no trust or an improper trust. When your spouse passed, she would have to pay taxes on that $2 million. Very simply, that would cause a big issue. Now, simply done in Massachusetts, if you're at that level, you would do trust planning so that you had a trust and your spouse had a trust, and when you passed away, $2 million would stay in the trust, not taxed, no report made. You don't have to tell the government, because in Massachusetts, if you don't have $2 million in your trust, you don't even have to tell them. Nicely though, that $2 million grows tax-free. And when the second spouse dies, all the $2 million, even if it grew to $10 million, is not subject to estate taxes. So instead of paying $200,000 on tax, you could have made $2 million. The other $2 million stays with your spouse, and that's what they use. And when they pass away, as long as it's $2 million or under, there's no tax on the $4 million. Properly done. So you can do all of this, and you can do with Paul, but if you don't do the little structure properly, it's not going to work. What's the big foible? So you go and you do the plan. You get it all done. You don't have a proper team. So you walk out of the lawyer's office. I can say this because I'm one, and we don't do it. They hand you a bag. They say, here's your estate plan. You walk out nice and proud. I got an estate plan. It's in a burlap bag. It's got your name on the folder and nothing in it because there was nobody to tell you what to do. That's what happens when you work with a team. And it's a team that grows with you, which is why Paul and I both emphasize the fact how lucky we were to have a generational business. Again, back to my beautiful wife. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to stand here and tell you all this because, frankly, your kids wouldn't have anybody to talk to. And they'll talk to my daughter and my daughter-in-law because they both work with me and they both do what I do. So we have that problem. But you need to have a team. And so we build the team. We avoid that problem. We make sure you have a good power of attorney. Just give you by way of example. Power of attorney in Massachusetts, improperly drawn, won't permit you to protect your house if you have to go to a nursing home. It's very simple. If you have a properly drafted power of attorney in Massachusetts and you have a spouse, you can protect your house if you have to go to a nursing home. Doesn't matter how much money you have, you can protect your house. Improperly drawn, you can't. So it needs to be looked at, it needs to be proper, and if it was drawn over 5 years ago, it probably won't work. So we're going to take questions at the end. You can write down what you want. We'll answer them specifically. But most importantly, if you're interested in what we talked about here, you should take advantage of the offer and get together with us, and we will look at your thing on a sky-high view to make sure that what you have works together and you have all the right tools to protect what these guys made for you, what Paul and his firm manage for you, to make sure that you keep it and give it to who you want to give it to.
I think there's one thing, Lou, which is the next slide, if you can make it go up. There's one thing you don't want to
Okay.
put into your trust anymore. Louis, what is the difference? And again, we want to let everybody off the hook because for 20 years, we drafted very sophisticated IRA inheritance trusts. And I want to let every financial advisor off the hook, every lawyer off the hook. And what happened when we say they pulled the rug out, 3 major legal changes made all of those things not only inoperable, they made them super harmful. So if you have a trust and you have an IRA, you have a problem. So of the things that you can put in your trust, I know you say we can put in that private equity ownership from Snape. We can put in chunks of real estate. And in fact, if you have a home in 3 states, instead of going to 3 probates, if you get them all in the trust, you can skip probate 3 times. But Lou, what did they do to pull the rug out from under people who were trying to fund their $2 million exemption using IRA money?
So what they did is, in 2019, they passed the Secure Act. How many people know about the Secure Act? A couple years later, they passed Secure Act 2. And the big difference was that they limited the distribution for inherited IRAs other than a spouse to 10 years. Okay, it is what it is. Everybody, all the kids have to get rid of their IRAs and pay the tax in 10 years. What else they did, however, was this, and most people don't know this. If you put your IRA in the trust, so the beneficiary is the IRA, we used to do that to protect it from, the kids wouldn't lose it and what have you. If you create a protective trust, which technically is called a dynasty trust, but it's a trust that protects the assets so the kids can't lose it, the government says they only have 5 years to distribute it, not 10, and they have to pay the trust tax rate, which is roughly 40%. So if you don't put your IRA in your trust, or you create a non-dynasty trust, in other words, a flow-through trust, which doesn't have any creditor protection, but at least will send the money to the right place, they'll get the full 10 years at their own tax rate. That's a huge mistake. So anybody who did an estate plan more than 5 years ago, who had trusts done, who used the trust to beneficiary their retirement funds, is running the risk that their kids are going to have to distribute the funds in 5 years and pay 40%. Another thing we look at when we look at this, that's a very big problem. You don't want your kids to inherit the tax bill.
Lou's got a lot of protective devices, and again, protective devices that require a team to get your money to the people you like or the institutions you like or whatever. And a lot of it has to do with essentially staying up at the times. And don't knock yourself if you haven't kept up. Believe me, you've got a life to live. And there's, in my career, 49 tax changes in 50 years. That's a lot, okay? And it's made us really shred some of the legal planning that we've done. It's just necessary. It's got to be done. And to recreate new devices for today. Now, in terms of talking about new devices, Lou said you could try to do some of these things yourself. We know there's 2 types of people. There's DIYs, the do-it-yourselfers, and then there's the delegate to others. We've always said educate or delegate, and you could learn about all these things. We have a lot of really bright clients with a lot of really successful children, and, we think that many of you in this audience could understand 99% of this. But now we have a third type of person that's come on the scene, and it's called the ChatGPT person, okay? Because not just doing it yourself, but doing it with the help of a piece of technology. And so just to let you know, I did one, by the way, I have it right here. I have a ChatGPT financial plan, which I'm happy to share with anybody. But let me just tell you, I told ChatGPT that I was a 70-year-old guy with 14 million bucks living in Newton, Massachusetts, and I was really interested in tax reduction. And I gave him the whole picture of what I had, and ChatGPT said, hey, no problem, you have a will, you're cool, you're fine. You'll have about $1.4 million in death taxes, you'll have about $1.2 million in IRA taxes, and about $300,000 in probate. But no problem, because you have like 7 million bucks in the bank. So if that makes sense to you, right, then use ChatGPT. Now, I will say ChatGPT, in order to let them off the hook, they're great at calculations, but ChatGPT doesn't have grandparents. They don't have grandchildren. They don't have any idea of what happens when you look in the crib and you see a little person that's related to you and you get hit by lightning and all of a sudden your whole perspective on the world changes. Or, you know, ChatGPT doesn't have a partner that gets sick and goes into long-term care or a nursing home and has the kind of issues that we deal with every day. So the world has changed, but not all of the things that AI is doing are helpful to us. Like, I don't consider this really helpful, and in fact, I think it could hurt some people. So let's talk about what I learned in 50 years of doing plans. 4,000 financial plans. Took me a long time because we started, remember, 1974. No Bowmar Alley computer, you know, yellow paper, right? Looking at the Wall Street Journal. Does anybody remember the Wall Street Journal with the stocks in the back? And we had a ruler, and we were looking at stock before Mike Bloomberg, one of the greatest local guys, invented the Bloomberg machine and all that. Okay, things have changed, right? What I learned the hard way was I spoke to a group of plumbing and heating association people, wonderful people. If you don't have a great plumber and heating person, you probably pay a severe price. But I was really dumb. I talked to them, and I thought, they're nice people, but they're really not that much smarter than me, right? I can do this. So I had a little leak in our sink at one of my homes, right? I went to Home Depot. I got a little washer, you know. I put the thing back together. I thought, wow, I just saved like 150 bucks, you know. And you probably heard that the greatest, like, flood starts at one drop. Well, this was the cost of me doing it myself. And this is, I can violate my own privacy. Linda thinks this is very funny, but we have a 3-level house, and on the bottom level was her lovely cedar closet and all of her nice clothes and all these like things, you know. And I'm one of those guys who still wears my jeans from high school, you know. Well, I knew something was wrong when the ceiling of the cedar closet collapsed, right? And the water, yeah, you're laughing. And the water, I thought I had solved, had been leaking for like 3 months into a huge lake on top of this closet. Well, anyway, the whole thing collapsed. The plumbers, the clothing people, the remodelers, they all love me. I mean, we were writing a lot, yeah, exactly, writing a lot of big checks. So by doing it myself, I didn't save myself a dime. Actually, it cost me money. And your leaky plans can do the same thing. This is a real story from like a week ago, right? When we were preparing this, I got a call from some boys that were the sons of a guy I knew like 25 years ago. He moved away. He never updated or maintained his plan, bought a house in another state, and he did one of these expensive trusts that Lou's talking about. It was like, you know, 8 inches thick. I mean, they probably paid by the pound, like bologna or something. It was a big, fat document, but there was nothing in it. And so after he paid that money, and again, it's not the lawyer's job. I have to say, in order to let the lawyers off the hook a little bit, lawyers don't do funding. Lawyers do documentation. Financial people do funding, okay? So boys called up. They found some of my old stuff, you know, in his paperwork, and they said, hey, what's the deal here, right? Well, he had a home in Massachusetts, a new home out of state, and they were off to probate because, again, what's worse than going to probate once? How about going to probate here, going to probate in Maine, maybe probate in Florida? I mean, you can, with multiple properties, go to multiple probates. Plus, he had left his IRA to trust, hadn't changed it since the laws came along. And for his boys, it was, you know, out of $1 million, it was about a $525,000 tax. Now, by the way, the tax is paid in their rate in their locality. So if you have successful children in New York City, California, New Jersey, they get to pay some hellacious, taxes go to 60%, right? So this was just neglect. It was a leaky plan, and I have to tell you, you know, we learned a lot in history from doing this for 50 years. One of the reasons that I'm writing the books and we're having some fun doing financial education, the two people up on the screen there, that lovely lady with the ribbon in her hair is my mom, Rosemary DiLorenzo. My father came back from the war. Like a lot of folks that came back from the war, I am telling you, you couldn't get the smile off his face. I have a picture of him on the deck of his ship. He was in the Navy, right? A kamikaze ship, made a big hole in the deck. He and his buddies, they were all like 19. They had these huge, I mean, they were just super happy survivors, right? They came back, they got married, they made babies, they bought houses, right? And on the right, for me, or maybe your left, is Norma, Linda's grandma. I learned a lot from her. She's from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. Linda's family's Canadian. She was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's a great long-term story. She has relatives from literally Vancouver to Newfoundland. I learned a lot from the Canadian family, and I learned a lot from that woman about longevity, right? I went to meet her, you know, to get the blessing, right, to marry her granddaughter, and she was about 91, 92 at the time. She just outlived her third husband. She said, I'm not going to get another one. They don't last. Like they're Buicks or something, you know? And she would stay up late with me at night. She'd take that television. You know, her vision was going, so it was on those roller tables, you know, little roller tables, and she would roll it right up to herself, and she and I would have some 151 rum, okay, and scream at the hockey games, because what is Canada? Canada is hockey, right? Right? And so I learned a lot from this woman who lived to 104 years old or 105, whatever it was, about longevity. She was living in the blue zone. And if you've read about Okinawa or if you read my book on longevity, right, what keeps people living a long time? Yeah, it's diet, it's exercise, it's genetic luck. It's socialization. It's doing some productive things in your life, right? The deadliest thing in your house is your couch. The second deadliest, I think, is the NFL and Budweiser. I don't know. But I think that I learned a lot from Norma about longevity. They both owned houses, lovely little houses. And I will tell you the thing about that generation. They would walk across cut glass rather than leave a house with a mortgage to their kids. Some of you in this audience might have experienced that with your own parents, right? However, the ball game changed. Leaving a house with no mortgage and then leaving an IRA with a 50% mortgage is like backwards thinking, right? It's backwards thinking. Death wipes out capital gains on real estate. Death does not wipe out capital gains on retirement funds. This is 2025 planning. We can't do planning today based on what Norma and Rosemary did in 1960, okay? So what are we going to do? How are we going to put it together? Well, I'll tell you, I have the benefit of like a lot of great experience. I'll work from the bottom. Rose and Sal, and I'll see if I can have one more quiz and give away one more. Oh, yeah, I have another giveaway. Okay, so my parents lived out their life on the Merritt Turnpike. You know, anybody ever drive the Merritt Turnpike between Connecticut and Massachusetts? You know, that twisty thing? Incredible. And so my mom and dad would come to visit their sons. My brother went to Tufts. I went to Northeastern, so we never went home, right? So they would come up to visit their sons, their grandchildren, and all that stuff. And when would they leave Connecticut to get to Massachusetts? Like 4 or 5 in the morning? Right? And that's laughing at me over there. And my mother would have what? A vat of her own homemade spaghetti sauce on the floor between her legs? Okay. This was a routine. Yeah, you're laughing. This was a routine. And it went on for years. And one day driving down the Merritt Turnpike, they got hit head on by some guy in a pickup truck that hadn't even gone home the night before. You know, broke my mother's neck when she was 80, crushed the car, rolled it over. My father had head injuries. Seriously disabled for the rest of their lives. They ended up at Yale New Haven Hospital. Thank goodness to them, saved their lives. A whole bunch of nursing homes for the next 7 years. In fact, my mom passed away down the road here at the Newton Wellesley Alzheimer's Center. I can't say enough about them. A great place. My dad was at the Wingate. Okay, this went on for a long time. Here's the quiz. If I didn't know that guy at the end of the table, and I didn't have great legal work, how many times would I have been through probate between that event and the end of my parents' life? How many times? 8 times. Who said 8? You win. I don't know if this shirt's going to fit you or not. It was a good guess. 8 times, right? Because in their case, I would have had to do a disability probate every year for 7 years until the end of their lives, because that's how it works. It's the same probate for incapacity and for death, right? So I would have had to go to a judge, file a bunch of papers to basically prove I wasn't robbing from myself, okay, as the beneficiary of this stuff. So it's crazy. The probate system is crazy. Great planning like Lou's was one of the greatest gifts of luck that I ever got. And when you're filling out your question cards later, we have a lot of question cards that are in your thing, and I want you to like fill these out and write out down stuff that's important to you while we're taking questions. You're going to pass them in on the way out, by the way, and what's going to happen is everybody, even if you don't get the questions right, are going to get one of these lovely Smart Financial bags and the books. We're going to give the books away. They're like little missionaries, right? And if there's a little bit of information in them that helps you, it's a good thing. I'm going to be signing them in the back when we get done, right? I think we have enough for 1 per couple, right? They're nodding at me from outside. Okay, 1 per couple, folks. All right. So let's keep going and get to the Q&A. Oh yeah, I want to just say my Norma story was that longevity is with us today. In fact, if you haven't read either my book or anybody else's book on longevity, it's very exciting. There's a high probability that a lot of you that have children are going to live to 100, right? And if you take care of yourself, you know, diet, exercise, socialization, do something with your brain. I just interviewed a guy on my podcast who he designed the spacesuit that Neil Armstrong wore to the moon. Joe over there knows who he is, right? And this fellow is now actually lecturing at MIT on the new spacesuits that are being designed. He's 90-something years old, 95 years old. And why is he healthy and vibrant? Because he's not on the couch, you know, all the time. I think he does like football, but he's not there all the time. Also for me, I have to say, you know, I had a lot of luck, and it started with the IATSE, Local 80, theater and stage employees. When I was working co-op jobs, you know, for Northeastern, I ended up in Hollywood, and I did end up being the film grip, and I did end up working on the Poseidon Adventure and Dr. Frankenstein and all that stuff. And I had a great experience, which taught me that actually employment benefits are super critical. You need to tell your kids when they're looking for jobs and doing employment, the salary isn't the only thing, right? In this day and age, especially because it's going to be so expensive to retire, right? Defined benefit plans still exist with 35% of the Fortune 1000 companies, right? And if your children are looking for true, great security, I know a lot of you in here probably have them, right? 35% of the Fortune 1000 still have them. Okay, why is there a Roth frenzy going on? The Roth IRA conversion frenzy is because of Secure Act 1, 2, and the BBB bill that was just passed. We have a temporary window. I mean, we've been doing millions of dollars of Roth conversions. Why? Things are going to change in the next couple of years. And if you have a trust, and you have people you like, and you're not looking at the benefits of doing a Roth conversion to essentially save lifetime taxes, you're missing the boat. Building a custom plan, and you want to hold one of those up, guys? Every one of these books, all right, has a custom-built plan, whether it's a smart financial grandparenting plan, a smart financial longevity plan, or a wealth-building plan for young people. And those folks that are out there, Matt Pescatori and Kenny, that are from Legacy Financial Advisors, will provide these plans for you on us. That means you meet with them and say, okay, show me what a smart longevity plan looks like, and they will create that on our nickel, okay? Next, how can one person, that's you, or maybe you're a single advisor who doesn't work in a team, how can one person actually satisfy all 8 areas of planning? It's almost impossible. So you can go to 5 different people and spend money on tax planning and insurance planning and Medicare planning and trust planning and investment planning. And I'm going to use my brother's example. My brother's a Tufts engineer, another Tufts alumni like him, very well-known guy in the greater Boston area, worked on, you know, a lot of high expensive, you know, Rolls Royces and Bentleys and Mercedes and stuff. And he used to say to me all the time, you can go to the parts department and you can buy $500,000 worth of parts and you can build your own Mercedes, or you can walk around the corner to the sales room and pay $100,000, right? And the expression is, we don't sell parts, we sell cars. The product that we advocate for the most is an integrated, comprehensive, total plan, legal, tax. Why? In 30 years, it's proven to be the most efficient way to get a Mercedes of a financial plan without trying to buy all the parts and live with the leaky cracks in between what your accountant tells you, what your lawyer tells you, what your investment guy tells you, what your insurance guy tells you, what your Medicare professional tells you, what your reverse mortgage, like there's 9 licenses involved in doing these plans, which is why a team is hypercritical. So the last thing is I want to tell you that we're all the same. After doing all these books and plans and everything, every generation looks different, but actually in the end, they're all the same. Everybody wants to live a long, healthy life. We want financial security, and we're all a little cheap. I have to tell you, like my mom, Rosemary, she wanted the best, but she didn't want to pay retail, right? So we all want to save waste and costs and fees and charges and taxes. Not that all taxes are a waste, but, you should pay your fair share, but not one extra nickel. And in a quality, comprehensive financial and estate and investment plan, right? What you pay for that plan will be just the best ROI in your life for saving. So I'm going to turn it over now to question time. And I know we have some questions here. I'm going to actually run some of these that we've already been given. And I know that the folks back there, Matt and Kenny, you can go down the sides, guys, because I see some people writing out cards, and you can pick up those cards, and let's get to this for the folks that are looking for the action items, whether it's a wealth builder or a Gen Xer about their Roth conversion, or if you're a grandparent and you haven't read chapter 1 of my book on getting college at half off for your grandchildren, right? You need to get that book. So grab your cards and fill them out while we're doing this. This is a good question here. And I know that a lot of people here have IRA plans. And can you write off your losses in IRAs or Roths? No, you can't. I mean, one of the reasons why people invest in non-IRA accounts is sometimes we get it wrong, right? And if you actually lose money in your investment account, right, that is a tax-deductible loss. But if you lose money in your IRA or Roth, you don't get to take the loss. Okay. This is a Lou question. Thanks. Do I pay probate in Maine where my vacation home is?
Just very quickly, when you pass away in a state, you have to file probate in the state you passed away. If you don't do proper planning and you had a house in another state, you'd have to do a probate in the other state. The unfortunate part is you have to do the probate in the state that you passed away first and finish it, and then take it to the other state and do it again. So the house that's in the other state has to sit there, pay all its costs, pay the taxes, pay the insurance, and has to wait for the completion of 2 probates in 2 different states and pay the costs twice.
Somebody wants to know about the fees involved investing in your fund.
Great question that I don't know if I covered. So with our fund, the idea is to provide access to 20 names at 2 and 0. So I mentioned earlier, very typical in that space is 2% management fee, which is a 2% fee that you charge. If you invested $1 million, you'd pay $20,000 every year. And 20% of any profits that you make. The idea with our fund is to charge 2%, keep the lights on, but all the profits that we make in that investment fund are yours to keep. Designed to be more like an index fund for those private assets.
Okay, so that was like a quick recap of what he said before about traditional private equity funds charge 2 and 20. That's normal, 2% every year, and then 20% of the profits. But so your goal with your fund is actually to compress those fees. Big time, big time. So this is one of those huge technological advances. It's like the collision of the financial and technology business, right? Less fees, more potential profits. Let's see. Okay, so this is a good question that you can answer.
I'll try.
Because we've had a lot of spouses pass away, and I think they want to know how you support the last survivor of couples that you do business with.
Do proper planning, so you do. If you have the money, you have to make sure it's invested properly, and you have to make sure that you don't lose it to taxes, it's really the seconds passing, the children is the one you're really trying to save, because you can take care of your spouse in Massachusetts with proper planning and without proper planning, to be perfectly honest. That's what trusts do. So if you had your money in trust, properly drafted trust, if you had specific goals that you wanted to have your wife live with, and your wife wanted to do that too, then you could memorialize that in your trust so that the trustees would manage the money on behalf of your wife. She could even be the trustee, for that matter.
Do you hold the trust? Does she talk to you? Is it written by you?
Yeah.
Is it in your
We do,
office?
yeah, we do it, yeah. Yeah.
Let me jump in on this, and I think that's a concept which has been in existence for a long time, which doesn't really apply anymore. So in the old days, what would happen is attorneys would write trusts, and they had a big vault. And they would take that trust, and they would put it in a vault. And one of the reasons they put it in the vault is when people passed away, they had to go back to that law firm. And the law firm then started charging them again, okay? So there's really two types of law firms in the world. There are probate law firms and non-probate law firms. Very, very clear distinction. And I will say, again, I'm not a member of the bar, so I can kind of say this for Lou, because I have had experience with both over the years. With Lou's firm, they do flat fee engagement, and they give you the trust. They don't hold it in a vault somewhere. It means that at the end of, when the first mortality comes, yes, you basically contact your lawyer that drafted the trust. You don't have to go to him. You can go to somebody else. Trust lawyers do legal work up front, so they don't charge you for the probate process, okay? Super important, and you're free to go wherever you want, okay? Okay, would you put a Roth inside a trust? Is that okay? Yes, that's exactly the right answer. Someone came to the right conclusion. Okay, why would you convert to a Roth? Why is there this big frenzy going on? Okay, we're converting to Roths because specifically they can be put into trust to fund the credit shelter. Now, here we are in Massachusetts. It's different in every state. We have a $2 million credit shelter. It's not transferable. That means $2 million for mom, $2 million for dad, $4 million total, but you've got to fund the credit shelter trust. So how do you fund it? If you fund it with a regular IRA, it's going to cost 40% in taxes. If you fund it with a Roth, there is no tax impact. There's no tax impact for you. There is no impact for your grandchildren. There's no tax impact. I mean, you can actually use the Roth conversion rules today, and I'm not saying this is going to last forever, but we have a window. The reason there's a frenzy on right now, some of you may know there's like 2 or 3 years of temporary tax breaks going on that expire in 2028. And, you know, we won't get into the BBB right now, but the reason that there's a frenzy now is to capture those things and to get your IRA converted to a Roth. Some of the terms are super, super favorable today, and then be able to jam that into a trust to make it what Lou calls creditor proof. That means that your daughter doesn't lose it to her first husband, your son doesn't lose it to his first bad business venture. You know, creditor proof means that that is a little vault that preserves your money to go down to the people that you care about. Okay, that was the answer to that. Okay, I have one for Pine. So, Pine, when you're doing real estate investing for clients, like if someone works with your firm, right, how do you actually charge them?
So, and this varies kind of for firm to firm, but usually what we're doing is, you know, a real estate project can cost millions of dollars. We need the equity in order to kind of invest. So we have fees. So there's like acquisitions fees, investment fees. So we will take a small fee, maybe like 1% of the project. But really, the person's kind of investing with us. So we get, like I said, kind of in my presentation, we get a lot of money if we make it right, but the person gets a lot of money, you know, as well. So it's kind of, we get so small fees, and then we also kind of are really true partners. That's how like a lot of kind of real estate works. So we need the money in order to get the loan to fund the projects.
So this is another question for Snape, actually. So if someone's going to invest some money, and they're going to make, you know, a tremendous amount of gains, right? I guess they could own that private equity investment in their IRA or outside. Okay, now here's the issue. Should you own a private equity, highly, you know, potentially profitable investment inside your IRA or not? So I'll give you my spin, and then he can give you his, okay? So IRAs convert capital gain to ordinary income. So you invest, I'm going to make up numbers. Like you invest $200,000 in their fund, it grows to 10 million, okay? If you're outside of the IRA, right, you have a capital gain rate of 15%. If it's in the IRA, it converts all that capital gain to ordinary income. Today in mass, maybe 40%, right? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to do one of these types of potentially highly profitable investments in an IRA format. It does actually in a Roth format. It does in a Roth format, which is not, that's the way I spin. Okay.
And the only thing I would add to that is that typically when we work with clients, we usually defer to very smart advisors like Paul and the people at Legacy because it depends for every person, right?
Yeah, depends for every person. So this is a question for Lou and his team over there. And I think you can answer this best, Lou. Somebody wants to know what the cost is to actually do a review.
Of their plan?
Yeah.
If you came to this meeting and you make an appointment with us, I'll review your plan for nothing.
Okay, it's the perfect answer. The perfect zero, okay? So, yes, as a part of this outreach project on the book signing and all that kind of stuff, we are providing some review services through Lou's firm. You won't pay anything out of your pocket to have a review and to find out the right answer. Let's see. Is LFA still taking clients? Hey, Kenny, pick up the mic. We have Ken Moran back there, one of our top advisory people. Can you answer this question? Is Legacy taking new clients?
We are absolutely taking on new clients.
That was kind of a simple layup question for you. It's a simple layup. Yes, of course they're taking new clients. And they're happy to take clients. They do have certain minimums and requirements and all that baloney, but you can talk about that when you meet with them. And if he said no, we would have a discussion after this meeting, right? Okay. Okay, in my book on longevity, wow, somebody must have read my book on longevity already. I know it's on Amazon, by the way, and you could download the audiobook for free. I don't know if you're like one of those audiobook people, right? And by the way, the first Spanish translation just came out. Does anybody here speak Spanish fluently, right? I have Spanish translations that are coming out, and the first one was the grandparenting book, and I learned all about abuelos, grandparents. Anyway, so the longevity book says that you can get long-term care at half off. We have these three expressions: Roth conversion at half off, portfolio management at half off, and then long-term care at half off. Okay, and they're buzzwords to get your attention because it's true. If you're looking down this longevity pipeline and you think you're fortunate enough to live a long time, there may be a few years of your life where you're going to need some assistance, okay? The products available today are far superior than they were years ago. You can pay $300,000 today. We just did a case where a client paid $300,000, they got $900,000 of long-term care. They paid for it in one payment, and the payment is refundable to them if they die. So instead of paying long-term care premiums forever and ever and having these companies raise your cost, right, you could pay a few $100,000, refundable, and have a big slug of long-term care protection. So yes, you can do it. I think it's chapter 6 in the book, but we talk more about it in the Smart Longevity book, which you'll get on the way out of here because you were smart enough to go to this meeting. I see that the clock is kind of winding down. I want to just give anybody who has a burning question an opportunity to raise their hand and have Kenny go to them with the mic, because I don't think I'm going to get through all of these before you guys fall asleep. Right? But is there anybody that would like to ask, raise your hand and ask a question that's not super shy?
What is the investment minimum investment for the IPO or the real estate?
The investment minimum on a per client basis is $100,000. So it's definitely for a slightly more, affluent end client.
Varies from project to project. We buy small kind of triple deckers, then we'll buy already built shopping plazas. So it just depends if it's whatever makes the most sense for the person we're talking to at that time. So it varies widely.
So it is conceivable that a limited partner in one of your projects could put in as little as $100,000 and be a part of one of your real estate projects.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
I think that was really the question. Anybody else have a question before we let these guys go for the night? They've done a great job. I want to thank our staff here that's put together this whole thing.
Books in the back, too.
The books are in the back. We want to thank these boys.
Get bags, too.
And the bags. I see the ladies out back with the bags. I want to thank you all, by the way, for helping us launch this book signing tour. And remember, you were here on September 25th. Yeah, go out the back. They're saying don't go out the front. Go out that way to collect your book bag. And we'll see you in cyberspace, online, YouTube, Facebook. Please click and follow us, right, and get all the free information we distribute. Thank you for coming.